Welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast with your charismatic host and prominent safety expert, Dr. David Perodin. Be entertained and informed as the Safety Doc discusses both best and bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. The truth will keep you safe. Follow Dr. Perodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD.
Hey everybody, this is David and welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast. This is the third intro because the first two had the wrong mic setting. So instead of this mic right here, for those of you watching this on the YouTube version, which is just a few inches in front of me, it was recording off a mic which is about 2 feet away. So yeah, anyway, we should be set for the show today. Our title, Projected Benchmarking, How to Spot This Garbage Media Ploy Following a Mass Shooting. So projected benchmarking is my own term, came up with that, might use it in some publications, but I'm still frustrated with the media coverage of the Las Vegas massacre, and certainly recognize the pain and just how disturbing that event was, and believe that was amplified unnecessarily by media coverage. And I'm not talking national media, although I do have one national media article that Yahoo put up, and I'm going to October 5th put it up yesterday, which is stupid, and I'm going to talk about it. But you know, I'm upset with local media. I live right outside of Madison, Wisconsin, so you know, a pretty large metro area, and just what the local Madison TV did the next day, which was pretty common. You know, I talked to some of my agents in the field across the United States, and the same thing plays out. It's just a ratings grab, and there's a pattern, and I want to talk about it because I want to make you aware of it. And I'm not sure anything necessarily is going to change with it, but it's frustrating, and I think actually it shows, it represents a desperation by the mainstream media to try to stay relevant right now. Those of you who are watching this, you can kind of see him adjusting my collar. So this is kind of a little bit of an itchy wool sport coat. So a few anecdotes to start us off. One is a reflection on the Katie Pashon interview. So that was last week. Katie with the Cajun Navy. So Katie, a shout out to you. And so I have adjustable arms on this chair, and sometimes I've got to get the one arm down in order to get the drawer open, and then if I don't reset it, then it kind of looks like I'm doing the show like sideways off a cliff or something. Still not right. All right, let's try that out. It's better. I don't know. So this will probably send me into chiropractics at some point to get all bent back into alignment here. I don't know, but so Katie did a wonderful job, and I still laugh because I got a hold of Katie, and she's tremendously busy in supporting the Cajun Navy Relief, which is different than just the Cajun Navy. Cajun Navy Relief, the Authentic, the 501c, the nonprofit is what Katie works with. And so, you know, we start kind of prepping for the interview, and she's outside in her garage, like, you know, getting some things moved around or whatever. I can barely see her. It's night, but she's got her iPhone on, and we're prepping, and she's in the house, and then the phone dies, and she's got to get the charger on it and some stuff like that. So, you know, remarkably, the audio was great on that show, Katie. But anyway, you can find Katie at Katie Pashon, which is the symbol at, for those of you who've never used the internet before. Katie, Katie, all one word, Katie Pashon, right? I don't know. I can't check it now. but Katiepechon, which you think would be more fluent considering reading this right off a piece of paper in front of me. But anyway, if you go Cajun Navy Relief, start looking under that, you can find Katie. Of course, that's my pinned post in Twitter right now, up until I put the new podcast out there, which I'm recording at this moment. So, but yeah, Katie's done a tremendous job, Cajun Navy Relief. What really struck me with the Cajun Navy Relief, again, is that, Katie, for example, was working on ripping out drywall, helping to gut houses in Louisiana from the 2016 flood, like a year ago. So it's one of these operations that scales up and then sustains. Other operations scale up and then they scale down and things move on. So very impressed by the Cajun Navy. Very mixed, timing for the show to come out, because it came out and then, literally a day later we had the Vegas shootings. So it was something where we have the best of America, grassroots efforts, people coming together, volunteering, helping others. And then of course we had the Vegas massacre. So it felt awkward to do a lot of promotion of the show. So I maybe didn't do as much with promotion as what I could have, just because I didn't want to give an impression that I was trying to divert attention away from what was happening in the moment in Vegas. So that is the reason, the show, and I've gone in now a little stronger back into Twitter and to work efforts on getting people to be aware of the show, but it was just awkward timing. I mean, I don't want to come out and say, hey, like this horrible massacre happened in Vegas, but look at all the great things that are happening with the Cajun Navy. Like those two things would balance each other out, So it was really kind of, again, awkward timing, but there's also something in there that if you watch the video and listen to Katie and listen to the Cajun Navy Relief and what's going on, there's a lot of really tremendous people and kindness and giving that's happening in America. And unfortunately, we have it interrupted by idiots, who decide to kill 58 people. So at some point, yes, the show is going to be moving over to Podbean. I've made that choice and have a few podcasting friends, including Hector Solis of Typical Daddy Podcast and the Awareness Podcast, which is going to be releasing its inaugural episodes here in a few weeks. You don't want to miss that. The Awareness Podcast. Go in Awareness Pod at Awareness Pod on Twitter. Follow Hector. Boy, he gets into some super hard-hitting topics and is interviewed. For example, like prosecutors in child sex trafficking and the stories behind the stories. He's extremely thorough, very very professional, and I've learned a lot from Hector, and he's a close friend. So, please subscribe. Follow the show. And I do appreciate that. Actually, it was a couple of weeks ago. I was sick and it was like 90 degrees here and humid, which was very atypical for Wisconsin in September. And I had this like upper respiratory thing, and I did a show and my voice was just horrible. I mean, it was like crackling and no matter what, I couldn't get through a show. And then if you put like 3 cough drops in, it looks like you got the mumps, or else in that affects how you're talking. So like, I'm like, I'm not doing it. So, I went a week without doing a show, and I had done like 45 straight shows, 45 weeks, and released basically every weekend, except, there were sometimes maybe like Monday or Tuesday if it was a really crazy weekend, but 45 consecutive shows. So I had a week I missed, and a few people noticed, they were like, you still broadcasting? What's up? And I don't know. I think I posted something like no show this week, like doing next week. But, and I've switched, my website's been updated. So if there are some people that follow the show on a regular basis now. I mean, it's growing. And if I go into analytics, I can see, internationally, there are people who are following the show. But I do have an organic population that will, regularly message me or email me and things like that. And like they listen to the entire show. Then they'll talk about like a specific point in the show and something like that. So maybe you're seeing some of those threads show up on Twitter. I mean, you don't have Facebook. So that's the one thing people are like, once you get Facebook, I'm like, which I had, and I have to figure out some way to get that in a way, which I do not want to friend anybody. I do not want to know what anybody else is doing. I don't care. But if it is what I have to do in order to get a podcast page where then I can share this and, like the Sustainable Living podcast, Marianne West. I love that podcast, and Larry Roberts, Readily Random, and other podcasts, of course, Awareness Podcast, Typical Daddy, podcast with Hector Solis. But anyway, they all have that. And it's not like I'm socially media, inept. I mean, I'm not. I had Facebook. I mean, and I'm using Twitter. I've got the website's really cool. Thank you, Larry Roberts, by the way. And, I go into the 405media.com. So the show is broadcast on the 405media.com out of Los Angeles, California.
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
All right, we are back, and thank you. So that was the 28-second go get your Doritos and use the bathroom break. You've listened to the show enough now where hopefully you can accomplish both those things during that time span. But yeah, welcome back to the show. But we have a formal partnership, not specifically a show partnership. It's a professional partnership. I've worked with Sprigio. So in the background, again, the signage is going to change to only Sprigio, and then the 405media.com and ISS 24/7. Definitely appreciate them supporting the show. They do incident management for example, the NFL, NCAA, large venues. Their systems are with communications and rescue, or critical incident management situations. Someone is at a baseball game, Major League Baseball game, and, they're up in section C of deck 112 or whatever it is. And they're having chest pains, that they immediately coordinate the emergency response to that section. So in talking about ISS 24/7, I believe ISS 24/7 had nothing at all to do in supporting the Vegas concert, but they do support large venue events, and in their capacity it is communications systems, and if an incident happens, and making sure that appropriate resources are dispatched to different areas. Don't try this. But Joe Bruzet from Sprigio. Sprigio is the nation's leader in, this is my Simon Cowell kind of look, by the way. This is the way I'm going to shoot most of these shows. But anyway, So Sprigeo.com, Sprigeo.com out of Santa Barbara, California, is the nation's leader in online bullying and threat, software bullying, harassment, threat, online, software reporting those. And I actually just had in Wisconsin a day or two, a high school student had reported another student who had made a substantial threat against the school. And that threat was then appropriately handled and de-escalated before anything significant could happen, thanks to the Sprigeo system and the response of administrators and police. I've been a believer in Sprigeo and in Joe. He's a great guy. He had written a book, I believe, the middle school years. Started Sprigeo. We met kind of like right after he had started. So I don't know, Joe, 7, 8, 9 years ago. Put his heart and soul into this company, just wanting to make kids safe. Really, really, folks, he's a great guy, has a great team working for him. And Joe and I met in Madison. He flew in from Santa Barbara, had some stops to do across the country, and one of the discussions we had was increasing my role with the company. I do work right now with user interface, and working specifically on how to make sure we're having the company is maximizing so it is reaching as many students, as many youth as possible through the interface, meaning that if you have a reading disability, if you have autism, if you're an English language learner, that you're able to interface with this system, because most systems out there are just too complex for that. The readability levels are too high. So I worked with I contacted a researcher at UW-Madison in the statistics department that I had taken a number of classes from, and got some feedback from him on some ideas I had for readability and how I would bring that information into Sprigeo, working with Joe. And also we are designing a brand new post-drill feedback system. So, think about it, kids. If you at work, you're doing a drill, it's a fire drill. Everybody, all right, fire drill. You hear the bell, go out to the sidewalk, stay out there till you hear the all clear, come back. Nobody really knows why or cares. And even on 9/11, through Amanda Ripley's book, which I forget the name of right now, but Amanda Ripley wrote a book after 9/11. And it's behind me, which might take me a while to find it. But she indicated, she interviewed a lot of people from the towers, and a number said, yeah, once the drills, we would have drills, like we're all supposed to get, into a certain area and then, descend down some stairs or whatever. Some of them didn't do it, after a while. It was just like, sound the drill. Some people assemble an area, some people wouldn't. 4 minutes later, you get the all clear. But, you run into drill fatigue. So we are working, I'm working with Joe and his team on an approach to tackle drill fatigue, which I think will be very effective. And he has shared it with some of the substantial clients of his company. They're very excited. So anyway, I'm looking forward to working with Joe Bruze in a elevated consultant role. I've done work with the company, but this is definitely a step up into a kind of primary lead consultant on interface design and looking at their data systems. You might say, Dave, why are you doing this? Well, remember also here, the Safety Doc does have a PhD. God, this is like, okay, as you look at this on YouTube, this arm is upright. This arm on this chair is literally 6 inches lower than the other one. This arm, which looks like it's down, looks like I'm leaning. This can't go any lower. I love this chair, by the way. And like I had to, after a while, the shock thing doesn't work. So the chair won't go, you can't adjust it up and down. So I permanently bought this fix off the internet. And again, I like to plug the company, I don't know, it's years ago. And you basically put these things around it and it fixes a chair in one position. But once you do that, it's kind of where it is forever. But that's fine for me because it was never adjusting that chair height anyway. So why are you working with Sprigeo? Well, because I'm a researcher, and I research safeties, safety input systems, high stakes decision making. I have a PhD out of Madison, UW Madison. And this is what I want to do. And I think, there are ways to make systems more accessible to more kids, more families. And as we just had with the Vegas massacre, that if you can identify ahead of time signs and get those into people and have those investigated, especially in schools, there's usually residue, there's recruiting. More and more information is coming out on this guy. I forget, Paddock, I guess is his last name. He probably worked with others, and it's like, hey, we had no idea. Of course, you're going to find, these websites he went to, people he interacted with. Of course, there's going to be a trail. But anyway, that hopefully you're going to have a system that's going to detect that. It's like the submarine with the super, super, super great sonar that can hear, like two lobsters duking it out on the floor of or on the seabed 300 miles away. Yeah. And, it's kind of like that. So really excited to be working with Joe on that. So anyway, there's 55 million kids that go to school every day. And, that's a lot, folks, in the U.S., 55 million kids. So if you have, your kids are going to school, understand what the safety system is. And if it's tell an adult, that doesn't work anymore. That doesn't cut it. Okay. It just doesn't cut it. So, if your school doesn't have a system, check into Spragueo. If you want to ask, talk about what they have. You can also go online, SPRIGEO, check out Spragueo.com. It is a great resource for schools. So, I don't know if any of you, and I'm smacking the mic here because I adjusted the position of it. But I'm not sure if any of you are aware of this company, 10,000 Villages. It is anyway, I went online a few years ago and bought some stuff, like with my daughters, I think for my wife's birthday or Christmas or whatever. But basically it's like supporting people from Africa and whatever. And, they'll take like a sardine can and make like a piano out of it, a thumb piano or something like that. Or some other cool things. Not that what they make is garbage, but it's just, it's crafted by villagers. So you're supporting them. I don't know. But, now 10,000 Villages has turned into basically 10,000 emails. Like I get emailed all the time by here's something new from 10,000 Villages. I'm like, new as in what? New as in like someone came up with this 10 minutes ago, hey, it's a giraffe made of cardboard. I'm like, okay, I'm fine. Like I know where your website is, but honestly, like in trying to unsubscribe that and LL Bean, those are the two. Once you get in there, I mean, you think the security breach with Equifax is bad. You get into LL Bean and 10,000 Villages and you get on their mailing list, you forget it. I mean, you've got to go, you basically have to give up your identity at that point and become somebody else until they find you, and it all starts over again. But, so, hey, please, I talked about this before, but please visit the show. We are on, when I say we, me, and, it's me, but, Apple Podcast, you can go and find the Safety Doc on Apple Podcast and go into, Twitter. Hey, at SafetyPhD, follow. Thank you for the Twitter following. That continues to grow. I remember, back in March in Disney, Orlando, I think we hit 300 followers, and the show kind of was rather new back then. And I was like, oh my goodness, like 300 followers. And today, we're up around 1,500. And to some people that sounds like a lot, and other people are like 1,500 is nothing, because I mean, some of the shows I follow have tens of thousands of followers. But I think it's pretty good because, you're not the average bear listening to this. You're intellectual and you want information that's not filled with rhetoric. I mean, I get the rhetoric out of this stuff, put it through the ringer, get the rhetoric out, and you leave here and you learn something new. And that's what I bring to you, new perspectives, and makes you a sharper person, gives you a little bit of an edge in dialogue with your peers on some of these topics. And I think just people appreciate, like listening to the show, you appreciate intelligent discussion. And where are you going to get it now? You're not going to get it from the mainstream media. And anything, that these documentaries that are done, they're, watch 4 minutes, 2 minutes of commercial, watch 4 minutes, 2 minutes of commercial, and you've got to do everything. So, you can't upset one sponsor. I mean, if you upset Irish Spring and they bail and they go under, then what are you going to use for soap?
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
And we're back. All right, this is a show which, because we're at 54 minutes right now, probably is not going to make the 1 hour limit. But anyway, we're going to keep going. So on October 18th, coming up here, October 18th, I'm going to be doing a co-podcast with Larry Roberts, who is the host of Readily Random Podcast. So if you go to readilyrandom.com, that is Larry Roberts' site. I love Readily Random Podcasts. Larry brings in guests of varying background, but kind of focuses on people that have some life struggles that they've overcome. And recently he's had some people on with addictions that they've overcome. And one of them was, I love every show. And Larry's shows, his shows are like 45 minutes. Larry is the professional at this. He knows how to edit. So it's great. And he had on a responder to 9/11. So it was a paramedic, young paramedic guy. I was 20, and he was coming out of, I think Jersey City. So was coming over on a boat with other firefighters, military, police, EMS, whoever could be assembled. And they were coming over on a tourist boat, like they would do a harbor tour. And he said, everyone was drinking. So this is what he said on the show. So I'm not but he said, everyone's drinking, and just the culture that was so much ingrained in over his career and how it impacted his career. And actually, he exited EMS because of addiction. But he talked about that, and just that story was never told. And of course he couldn't. How can you tell that story without people starting to say, oh, look at all the drunk responders, coming in and partying it up and stuff like that. And of course the reality is, people are knowing they're going into a situation where they might not be returning. And it is, it's not uncommon, even, in the history of war for these types of things, for it, the kamikazes to drink before that, they would go in and, have their final attack. But yeah, he talked about it, but of course it's a story we don't hear, and we probably will never hear in a book or anything like that, because someone's, there is be taken out of context, and it wouldn't shed an appropriate light on responders. To me, I'm a critical incident briefer. years ago was a firefighter. Never had anything like this that I was involved in, but certainly do not have a hint of looking down at any of those people that he mentions for doing that. Not in the least. But it is a fascinating story where he just talks about that heavy culture of even like the bars opening up at 7 a.m, kind of secretly, for the ambulance drivers who'd get off shift and the nurses and things like that, and so they could go in and kind of commiserate and talk about their days or nights, I guess, and be there for a little while, collapse into bed or on the couch and get up and kind of do it all over again. So, but anyway, readilyrandom.com. Visit that. Larry's really putting together some awesome shows, and I email him afterwards, and sometimes I try to make contact with his guests. Like I'll say, Larry, can you contact this guest? And I have like a question or something like that. And some of them are like, yeah, no, I don't. They kind of don't want to contact anyone else, but yeah, Larry does a tremendous job. Check out Readily Random. So anyway, we're doing this co-show, Larry and I, and I've gotten to know Larry. You get to know people in the podcasting community. So, and we're doing a co-show on October 18th, and we're basically going to talk about comedy after tragedy and how you handle that. Because Larry's also a comedian, and I think I have comedic tendencies and have always had that too. But a number of the people on his show, for example, have gone through, extreme life things, and when they tell their stories, there's often humor that they inject or laughter or things like that, and I think that can be misinterpreted because, again, in my work as a critical incident debriefer, and just studying human psychology, part of the reason people do that when they tell these absolutely kind of horrifying life stories, these accounts, is it's a psychological coping mechanism. So even the laughter that you're seeing is this mental kind of disconnect, this self-defense that a person is putting out so they can tell a story. And sometimes that gets misinterpreted. I was talking to Hector Solis on his podcast he's going to be releasing soon with the Awareness podcast. And one of the people who was a victim of a very, very significant event talks about that and shares some laughter in that. And he talks about how that person was, in sharing that story, in a different venue, what was attacked by a number of people of not taking it seriously or not, blowing it off or making light of it because, you're smiling or you're laughing. It's like, no, that's, when they show the TV show MASH, MASH based upon the Korean War, and they bought a lot of stories, and you see like Hawkeye and, and the doctors are always playing tricks, but then, the rest of their days are up to their elbows in blood and surgery and things like that. It is that macabre type of humor that you have to have just to get through some of these things. And again, people misinterpret that. So, but Larry and I are splitting that show up into kind of talking about comedy after tragedy and just our own perspectives on that, because I struggled with, after Vegas, of, again, I want it to be very tactful. And, Katie was a lot of fun to interview for the Cajun Navy Relief show, which came out the day before Vegas. And I was going to have a little more fun with promoting that show. And I pulled back on that because I just didn't feel that was the right time for that. But yet there is a time for humor. And I remember after the September 11th attacks, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld and maybe 4 or 5 other significant comedians at that time came together in New York and did a show. And it was kind of the first show, like after the 9/11 attacks, a significant comedy show. And I remember there was a preface to it. They came out, or else they had recorded and played on a screen to the audience before they came out, just saying, you know what, like it's awkward. We don't know how this will go. We don't know how this will feel, but we know humor is a part of who we are. Humor is a part. It's a distraction from other parts of the grinds of life and the tribulations of life and the pain of life at times. And so we're going to do this, and this is to have no disrespect to 9/11, but all respect, just to all of us in humanity and to America. And it went really well. And Larry and I are going to talk about that and kind of just our own things with podcasting. Do our podcasts get influenced because of what is happening on a national event? Does that change how we put our shows together and release them and the feedback we give? And then Larry and I are going to do a little bit of a time travel. Hey, we're the same age. I think Larry and I are like a year apart. So we've got, we can talk about the same things, the same music, the same type of stuff growing up and encountering. And we're going to each share a couple college stories, funny college stories. So like Larry and I were in college at the dawn of the internet, and it was, and social media was far down the road yet. And I think that was also just like maybe the introduction of cell phones at that time. Maybe, that was like your cell phone. It wasn't even the flip phone, it's just where you could how did it have texting? I don't know. But, anyway, so yeah, we've got some pretty funny stuff to share. So this is going to be a long show. Long and awesome, right? This is a show you're going to listen to, Aaron, when you're hiking and you've just been bit by the rattlesnake and you got the tourniquet on and you're like, I'm going to survive here for like another hour and a half. And I'm going to listen to the rest of Dave's show. And thankfully, I'm not going to have to skip shows in between and go to something else. So I appreciate that. So the Las Vegas massacre, oh my goodness. So, I'm stating kind of the obvious, but the reason I do this is I look at the analytics right now, and people watch or listen to the show from all over the world. Not a huge world audience, but if you're in Australia or somewhere else, I just want to make sure I give some basic bare details of what happened. And if you listen to this, of course, 6 months from now, or you find the Safety Doc after podcast 117, and you're like, I want to download all this guy's stuff and listen to it. So, I want to tell you, so anyway, the Las Vegas massacre, during the evening of October 1st, 2017, 58 people were killed and another 489 injured when gunman Stephen Paddock fired on a large crowd of concert goers at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival on the Las Vegas Strip. So 58 people killed, including Stephen Paddock, the murderer. Then it would be 59. So what happens after this? So the news starts to come out, that something happened and whatever, so that's your first 3-4 hours. This something happened significant down in Vegas, a number of deaths. And then the Google and Facebook were criticized for prominently displaying false news. So false stories start being generated domestically and then internationally, and they start to filter in. Like there's a country, I forget where it is, overseas. I read an article, do a little follow-up research, but and a lot of people in the country, that's their primary income is just to create and post false stories that make it onto U.S. mainstream media and get so many click-throughs and stuff like that. That's how people make money. So anyway, Google and Facebook were both criticized for prominently displaying false news stories in some of their search results. That's been cited. The two companies were said to have failed in their responsibility keeping false stories from reaching the public. Facebook later said its algorithms were designed to detect and remove false stories, but failed to work adequately in this instance. So one is, I think there's just so much flooding, and people are getting more astute of how they're posting false stories. I mean, remember the days when you used to get the email and be like, hey, you know, I am from Nigeria, and, you know, Nigeria would be spelled wrong, and it would be this real wacky, like, return address, and all these spelling errors, and I'm, you know, a royal family member, and I need to give you $84 million, and then you can give it back to me, and I'll let you keep $1 million and stuff like that. But, I mean, the stuff is very sophisticated these days, so these pseudo stories coming out, you know, start to mirror the real thing, but there's no vetting. There's no vetting because I don't care what Facebook and Google and you know, what they say with social media, but they don't. They pump it out because they want the clicks. They want the clicks and they want the money, so they put it out there. So you know, I'm going to tell you where you can get some verified information, but I absolutely. I was angry. I was sickened, dismayed, not surprised. This has become typical. Just frustrated. Because journalism used to mean something. You know, I remember Space Shuttle, the Challenger disaster. I was in middle school at the time. And a student had a set of headphones on in my class. It was during study hall. And headphones at that time, you know, were like what I'm wearing now. He was listening to the radio, and all of a sudden, like, he went over to the teacher, and then the teacher started listening. And then they left and went into another room where there was a TV, not a flat screen TV, you know, those big TVs on a cart, or if it fell over, probably would have killed you. But, and we got kind of all ushered into this bigger room, and we were seeing the news. I don't know, ABC, Dan Rather, whatever, saying that the space shuttle had just exploded. And, but there, I mean, you could say that was genuine news. Like, they were showing some video. You had, at that time, a journalist reporting on the objective, what was known. And it wasn't, you know, all of these other conspiracy theories, you know, coming in, and, you know, we interviewed this person and this person and this. No, it was. But so anyway, you know, this is what we're always going to deal with this now in any events, any significant events like this, Sentinel events, human drama events. There's going to be sensationalism. It's going to come out, and the media is going to jump on it. They're not going to verify it. The mass media. Again, they want the clicks. The clicks mean money. The media is losing share to podcasting. You know, they're not losing as much to me. They are losing those significant amounts to, you know, there are podcasters I download and listen to, and I will be downloading their show, and I'll be like, hey, 1 million other people download it. And it's accurate. And, you know, if I'm getting information about economics, I'm not going on, you know, some Morning Star, some whatever site, Motley Fool, and listening to some garbage there, you know, and trying to piece through all of the ads. And, oh, by the way, if you want the rest of the article, click the next button. And if like the next button is surrounded with like 9 ads, like within a millimeter of it. So if you're not absolutely precise with your mouse, then suddenly you're taken off to some ad that you have to like backtrack 5 times through to try to get to where you were. But, you know, I'll listen to Aaron. I'll listen to Aaron Clary and Captain Capitalism Clary podcast. And, you know, Aaron will periodically, you know, come in, and he's got Poor Richard's Retirement out there, and give you some of the lowdown. I'll listen to Peter Schiff, interviewed by Stefan Molyneux, and have Peter Schiff talk about the economy. You know, Aaron was a banker. Peter was, and still is, a fund trader internationally. So, only listen to the police. Only listen to the police. So when you go on TV, you watch TV, or you watch a video clip on YouTube or whatever's out there, you know, if this person is with the police that are there, not like your local police, like, you know, the Clark County Police Department, the responding police who are giving them information about the incident of the scene. That's who you listen to. That's where your information comes from. Especially initially, that's where your accurate information is going to come from. Only listen to the police. So anyway, the local news. So our local news here, I'm talking about Madison, Wisconsin. So, you're probably reaching about 1 million people, when, in the metro area. So here's what our local news did the next day. So we're talking, about 12 hours later that they were starting to put this out there. The local news, this is what they did. They immediately interviewed school administrators, and I knew some of these folks, and so they interview them, and also police officers or police chiefs. And here's the questions that they asked. Okay. They would ask, one, how would you have responded to this incident, or like your organization, had it happened here? Okay. And second question, how do you train for these incidents? Okay. For this incident, how do you train for a guy on the 32nd floor who's taking shots at you in the dark? And C is, what is your advice to everybody out there? So these 3 questions suck. They're horrible journalistic questions in this context. I'll tell you why. And, so this is talking head stuff. I mean, this is people who come in, they know nothing about, the reporters know nothing about this. They no research on this. So the school, and anyone they put on the air typically wants a little bit of time on the air, and so the school folks respond to this, and typically, like we do our drills and our training, and we let kids know that we try to have them be a part of it, but we can't always keep them safe. And, okay, so that's reasonable. I mean, but the fact is, but why are you asking? This wasn't a school shooting, and this is, so it's what, 58 deaths. I mean, that's 58 deaths happen in a month in Chicago. I mean, so do you talk about interviewing, like, how do you keep your students safe when they're walking to and from school or visiting metro areas or something? I mean, it's you're taking this and transposing it. And what's the title of this show anyway? This term I came up with, projective benchmarking, meaning you take something that happened somewhere else and you instantly put it like as it happened here. Like if this would have happened here, and you kind of take away the as if. It's like, let's imagine this happened here. So again, 32 stories. You have 22,000 people at this concert at night, and they're in this area, and of course you have barriers up to keep people in, these certain areas and checkpoints and stuff like that. So all of these things which you cannot transpose, this isn't a typical active shooter event either. It's not like you have somebody who is on the move. You have a fixed location, but you don't know where that is. It's night. The whole strip is lit up until someone finally, finds out that it's coming maybe from over there. But trying to go toward the exits. But again, just to get into this, how would you respond to it if it happened here? It didn't happen here. It's not going to happen here. Like, you have a different context and situation. Okay. The last time something like this happened was the Texas clock tower, in 66, 51 years ago. I mean, so just a stupid question. So, you cannot, and I talked about this in other shows. It's like, the Murrah bombing or 9/11 or all of that stuff, and bringing it into people's front yards and saying, well, what if it happened right here? Well, it's like, it's a different context and situation. And yeah, it didn't happen here. It's not going to happen here. And if something happens here, it's going to be different. And then you're going to be asking somewhere else, well, what if that happened right here happened somewhere else? Like, how would you respond? Let's go to place B. So anyway, how do you train for such instance? No one trains. I mean, you train in general, but nobody knew that this is extremely rare. Somebody coming up in a hotel in Vegas and knocking out windows and shooting down on someone. I mean, it's never happened, so 50 years prior, you had the Texas tower, but, the clock tower, but no. So like how do you train? I mean, again, that's for such instance. I mean, like, how do you train exactly for this? like a crowd of 20,000 people being shot at. How do you train for that? Well, you don't. You know, you train in general, like if there's an attack that some core information, which I'll get across. But these are all nonlinear events. Like all of these are different. Okay. You have to take even at 9/11, like there was no training for how to rescue 500,000 people in 9 hours by boat at 9/11. There's no training in cities, metro cities, for what if there's a nuclear bomb detonated in your city. And we know that there's numerous, briefcase bombs missing from Soviet Union era. But, nobody trains for that, and they don't train because one, it's overwhelming, and it's like in the context you'd have to take the context and situation and deal with it in the moment of like, okay, this happened, this is what we're left with, so now here's our plan. So yeah, when's the last time, New York has trained for a mass nuclear weapons attack? Just, how do you train, for instance? Just stupid. And C is advice. And this is the one where someone will take a sound clip, and they actually did this. They had this on the news, and they had an officer, and they're like, well, there was someone who said like they just froze after the shooting started. And that's the worst thing you can do. Like, you need to run. And we do active shooter training classes, and the public can come out, and I'm like, you know what? No, I research this stuff. Like I've worked with the best in the world. Okay. You may be a police officer, but I'm telling you, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. The Vegas case, for example, your advice, this person who said I froze, and I read a number of accounts too, by the way, where people said they all ran. And if you look at the injuries that occurred, a number of the injuries were stampede injuries from people, running over other people. But no, the advice that you're giving in this case, your first step, if your first step is to run, that's not your first step. Okay. I'll tell you why, but it's not your first step. But no, and everyone's going to give advice. It's their moment, and they're going to go out there and they're going to capture this, and it makes them feel important. And sometimes the best thing is to say, I would really respect watching, someone from law enforcement come in and say, listen, we cannot transpose this event here. We cannot benchmark it to here and say, here's our advice, because there are so many variables. This happened 12 hours ago. We're just starting to learn. Like, you don't know the perimeters that were put up for this. You don't know the different lighting, and that people could have even seen, for example, anything that was up above, or if people felt, that you can identify where the shots were coming from. So, you don't want people to run toward where the shots might be. Also, there's an assumption it's a single shooter, which you knew at the time you're interviewing people, but at the time people are on the ground and 500,000 plus rounds are flying. You might believe there are multiple shooters out there. So this is just garbage to take this and make this, shape this into your own. What if this happened here? So, what else do I have here? So, yeah. So basically, people who are asked this, school administrators, police, and so forth, they're basing a few facts. They're basing on things that they generally know about safety or things that they've done locally. But again, they don't know the information. Like, it'll take 18 months, and there'll be a report that'll come out on this. Like after Sandy Hook, it was 18 months, and there's 1,000 pages out there, and 10 hours of video and other things. And that's when you can look, and then you can start to actually, if you want to have a discussion of, after knowing all of this information, how might we handle something like that here? I think you can have some of those discussions, but no, not after 12 hours when you have really no idea of what happened. But what you do, I guess what happens is you bring this fear then in. it's almost like you're reporting this as if it happened here. And like it's like a razor's edge, like a thread away from happening here. Again, something like this is extremely immediately. I mean, when I know it was elevated position, that indicates someone has very high depth of training in something, carrying out an attack like this. But you bring fear. What you're doing, you're not educating in the media. You're not informing. And I talked to somebody today about this, who's in the clergy actually, and they said, yeah, they're talking to other clergy, and they said the media has gone from the purpose of trying to inform and educate to really just trying to get attention and scare, and do things like this, which is garbage journalism, and get the clicks and get the views because they're competing for their life right now because they're being eaten alive by podcasts and by online reporting. And you can do things like Periscope. There could be a journalist who could grassroots cover this right on YouTube. I don't know if that was done or not, but it's done in other cases. I know it was done in the Oroville Dam, for example, and it still is. If you want to just the Oroville Dam in California, there's a guy, Blanco Lario, Wayne, or is it Wayne Allen? I forget his name. He's a really good guy. He covers that, the Oroville Dam crisis. It's kind of resolved. They're fixing it, but people just went to him. I think he received like a media award. He has like a little plane. He would fly over. He'd take pictures. He was learning all about it, how the dam works and that. And people were like, this is where I'm getting my news from. Like him. I'm going to him for my news. And I would go to it, and he would, I'd watch. I was curious to the updates, but that's the news. He's not hyping everyone. So this whole practice of projected benchmarking, which I think sucks. And I think it's what the contemporary media is using now. And again, especially the local media that doesn't have anybody out there, like Madison. They don't have anybody out in Vegas. So, I mean, they're having to plug into whatever their affiliates are. But I just, again, I got so mad about that. And I wanted to contact them or post or something, and I didn't because it wouldn't make a difference, and it would, so. But anyway, you're listening to this, and I'm going to tell you something like this. The next time something happens of this scale, how to keep yourself from getting absolutely scorched by your local news who wants to turn this into, fear, which is going to keep you glued and get you to their website and click on all of their suggestions and things like that. But anyway, I'm going to skip over here. So on Yahoo on October 5th, they posted an article, Surviving a Mass Shooting, 9 Quick Decisions Made by Those Who Live. The article is by Corin Miller, Korin Miller, Miller, identified as writer. Congratulations for Yahoo News. So 9 quick decisions made by those who've lived. And I'm just going to read the first paragraph here. People are horrified and scared in the wake of Sunday night's mass shooting of concertgoers in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time this kind of attack has happened in the U.S., which has left many people the same question, what should I do if I'm in the same situation? Okay, one, that's a really pukey intro. Unfortunately, this isn't the first. Don't state the obvious in the intro. Okay, don't state the obvious in your article. And to say, like, what should I do if I'm in the same situation? You'll never be in the same situation ever. There is no such thing as sameness. There's similar situations, but there's nothing that's the same. There's not the same context. There's not the same, situation, context, time, surroundings. Everything is different. Every day, even if you try to live the same day twice, like I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow. I'm going to brush my teeth, the same amount of toothpaste. I'm going to have the same meal. I'm going to drive the same street. It doesn't matter. Everything's different. And timestamps, things evolve. And Katie pointed that out with the Cajun Navy so well. Like the rescue she was doing, she's using Zello and different communications apps where we didn't even have those 2 years ago. So anyway, this is where you start. The moment you say, what should I do in the same situation, is you're pre-programming people to think that this is linear. So like if A happens, then I do B. Or in this case, if A happens, I have nine things like I have to remember. And if I do all these 9 things, like I'm going to be in really good shape. And a lot of this is crap. So, and let's talk about it. One is, okay. Anyway, God sakes, what is, there are many potential variables when it comes to mass shootings, but the actions you can take to help ensure the safety of you and your loved ones are the same. No, again, they're not. They're not the same. They're not the same, okay? Again, there's similarity, but not the same, and there are many potential variables. Many potential variables. It's an open system. It's chaos. It's nonlinear. You can't. I mean, it is many potential variables. The moment somebody comes in an active shooter situation, again, and to say this was an active shooter situation, I think is a stretch because it was a fixed position shooting. It took a while to identify where the shooter was located, but the shooter was, and I guess you had the 2 rooms, but you didn't have this person, running around the concert site, like chasing people and things like that. But, no, again, there are many potential variables. There are literally, tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of variables. On 9/11, the boat rescue that rescued 500,000 people in 9 hours, one of the variables was it was weather-wise a perfect day. What was it? About 80 degrees, 4-mile-an-hour winds, calm harbor, and it happened in the morning. By the time the rescue wrapped up, there was still daylight. Daylight was waning at that point. If it would have been a cold day, choppy water, windy, it would have been completely different, or, more toward winter, so it gets dark. You're trying to do a rescue in the dark. It would have been completely different. Okay. And those are just a handful of variables. So anyway, no. So here's what our good buddy, Corin Miller says. And Aaron, if you're listening, feel free to chime in on this with any of your own thoughts. And anybody else here who follows the Safety Doc, please, let's get some threads going on this. But the first thing, memorize your exits. That's good advice, but you come in, you've got 22,000 people in an open air situation, and likely they're changing once people are in. They're probably moving some of the barriers to manage crowd control and stuff like that. It's not necessarily that you don't know where your exits are. It's like, how the hell do you get to your exit when 22,000 people are running and it'd be like, I've gone to many games at Lambeau Field. I mean, just when the game's done and you're orderly leaving, and it's hectic, and now you have people who are running in every direction because, you don't know where the shots are happening and stuff like that. So memorize your exits. That's like, I'm coming into this of like saying, it's like stating the obvious. Okay. It's like stating the obvious. When it's sunny outside, wear sunscreen. Don't look directly into the sun. Sunglasses can help you, see when you're, okay. Let's go number 2. Leave the kill zone in quotes as quickly as possible. Okay. You don't know where the kill zone is. You do not know where the kill zone is. People, you have 22,000 people, and what do they have here? So, they have a quote here: "Don't wait to see what everybody else is doing. If something bad happens, quote, take action immediately." J. Pete Blair, PhD, a professor of criminal justice at Texas State University, executive director of Advanced Law Enforcement Emergency Response Training Center, and co-author of Active Shooter Events and Response, tells Yahoo Lifestyle. Hey, J. Pete Blair, you're wrong. You're wrong. I can bring in people who, I don't know if I can bring anybody in with a title longer than yours. And Pete, I don't know the context. Okay. So I'm not going to, I'm going to kind of not go too crazy on this because I don't know, what you all surrounded this with, and then what writer put out here. But the fact is, you have to, is take action immediately. The first thing you have to do, imagine it's night. Some people think this is fireworks. Some people are running. You don't know where the shots are coming from. You have to try to figure out what's going on. And probably your first thing here is, what your advice is, maybe is to lower your profile, is to get down. And so if you're standing up versus getting down, you're instantly knocking your profile down in half. And then to look and try to conceal yourself and give yourself then some seconds to go through your heuristics of what is really happening here. And if you can identify where the shots are coming from, that's great. He talks about leave the kill zone, but you don't know where the kill zone is. You don't know exactly where all of these shots are coming, where they're encompassing. There could be other shooters involved. Again, that this was one person. I'm sure during the moment there were people down there who thought there were multiple shooters. So this is crazy. This is crazy. You talk about the kill zone, but you don't know what the kill zone is. You could be running from this Vegas thing. You could be running right into where the shooter was. I mean, if one of your exits was to run out on, the road toward Mandalay Bay. So again, it's a statement where on the surface it makes sense. In reality, it's completely stupid. Okay. You don't know where the kill zone is. In some cases, you might. I mean, if you see an active shooter and you're in a mall and they're walking down and, they're shooting some people and you're 5 stores away, that you can get into a store and conceal yourself behind something, that makes sense. I mean, to get out of that kill zone, but to apply it to this case at night when people, again, a lot of people are just saying we thought it was fireworks. They're not immediately identifying where this is coming from and what do you define as the kill zone, and are you introducing yourself into the area more proximal to where the shooter is, or that there are additional shooters. It just is simplified. It's a stupid statement for this article. And unfortunately, oh God, now I got to do the read more. Stay low to the ground and zigzag. Okay, that actually is pretty good advice. Stay low to the ground and zigzag. The first part, stay low, get low. But the second part is you have to think. In the military, the first thing, after you minimize your profile, is you move into communication. And what I say, not these things, run, act, fight. My first thing always is think, because you need to look at what is completely around you. I mean, what if, for example, like the people that found the cooler next to them, or what if there's a light post that is next to you and, has this big concrete base. I mean, that you can get down behind that. I mean, those are the things that you have to take those seconds to figure out, so you don't make a decision which is going to put you into harm's way. Other people say, well, that's stupid because then you're just giving time. I mean, I'm talking seconds, and the brain processes information relatively fast. I mean, in these chaotic situations, very fast. Rory Miller wrote several books on how to train guards in correctional facilities, and he did that himself. But he talks about this thing of taking that time to think about what you're thinking of in those few seconds to know, so you can override kind of what an innate reaction might be to what intellectual reaction would be that you've actually thought out. And yeah, I mean, if you're leaving and zigzagging, now in this case, like everyone probably, I mean, to zigzag might not be practical, because you might not have the space to do it. And the zigzagging obviously is, and that's just a pattern. It's a strategic military pattern. They did it with boats and everything else because it's hard to get a fixed location on something that's moving in different directions. So yeah, pretty general information. I think stay low should have been like one of the first things, like get down, lower your profile. 5, if people are getting trampled, try to find protection. And here it's like, try to get behind like big speakers, big light stands, look for a structure to get behind. If people are getting trampled, but how the hell do you know that? How are you making this assessment when 22,000, it's like stadiums, when people rush down onto stadiums, they do not know, like in Camp Randall in Madison, they had the crush of 7, 8, 9 people were killed, I believe, back about 20 years ago after, I think it was beating Ohio State. They were crushed up against the railing in the front, and since they modified the stadium, so hopefully something like that could never happen again. But the people 10 rows in back had no idea 10 rows ahead of them that these people are being crushed to death. So this is like this knowledge again of if people are getting trampled. A lot of people probably didn't know people were getting trampled, and try to find protection. Why would you say if people are getting trampled, try to find protection? Wouldn't you try to find protection anyway? So I don't know. 6, tell your kids they need to listen to you and carry them if you can. What the hell kind of a statement is that? Tell your kids they need to listen to you? Like, who are your kids going to listen to? I mean, and carry them if you can. So isn't that an intuitive, it's like, hey, yeah. Or, my wife, or, I'm there with 3 friends. Hey, we have to listen to each other. Jeez. Yeah. And you wouldn't pick your kid up and carry them and naturally run. Stay off your phone. Oh, Lord. Well, yeah. Because if you're on your phone during the event, one is you're focusing on your phone and you don't have situational awareness of what's happening around you. So that's why you stay off your phone. It doesn't say that necessarily here. But you stay off your phone because you need situational awareness, completely aware of what is happening around you. Okay. That's why you're staying off your phone. Lock or barricade yourself. So they make some big leaps here from the fact of like stampeding to all of a sudden now step 8 of lock or barricade yourself in, deny access. So they're kind of taking this, they put these pieces together from a whole bunch of different resources. So this is like, if you're in a building and you can barricade yourself behind a door, but deny access. But see, the reason you do that is because the active shooter typically is not being discriminate and looking for you. They're looking for people to kill. Okay, in general. So, and these events last about 8 minutes. So what this one lasted 9, but active shooter situations last about 8 minutes, and they will identify if they're in a building. They'll identify the targets which are in plain view, or if it's unlocked doors, if a door is locked, or if it's, barricaded or something like that, they're going to move on to a lesser target, less fortified target. So they'll just keep moving on. So yeah, that's why you do that. So they get into like longer paragraphs here about why to do certain things. Like if people are getting trampled, try to get protection. But yet there's like one sentence here for lock or barricade yourself in. If you're in an area when you're trapped, like an office, try to deny access to your location by closing, locking, and barricading the door. Idiots. Again, this is assembled from pieces of information. That is a situation where now that's inside of a structure. This wasn't inside of a structure, so at least stay consistent to, like, what if you're in an open air situation? 9, defend yourself as a last resort. Obviously you do everything to preserve yourself. But again, that had no application to this at all. You can't defend yourself up against a guy in a building 32 stories up. So this article it's a hodgepodge. Who are you again? Corin Miller? I don't know. I think I tweeted this article out once just saying this is bad journalism. And Corin, this is horrible. Come on the show, be a guest. I don't know. And the thing is, I'm looking at this more. You pulled valid quotes from some professionals. Like, you're kind of all over the place in this, like different people that you cite. But they're all, you kind of put them into different contexts, like just in general, and this could be outside and this could be inside. And no, it really, this is misplaced. This is misplaced. How I would have written this, and first I really wouldn't have probably written this and probably not this soon. Because I think I would have wanted more information about the outside venue and how the venue was set up and how just the exits were in general and some of those things before I shoot off an article like this. But I think one is, you lower your profile if something is happening. You are then using your heuristics to think of what your options are, trying to conceal yourself. If you identify where a shooter is, and you can get to what you perceive as an exit or a safe area. But again, you're thinking single shooter, the lone wolf. Remember Klebold and Harris, that wasn't the case, and they tried to recruit more. And who's to say this guy wasn't working with others? And you could have had other people on the ground to a radio that he's communicating with. So get out of the shooter's line of vision, and you had no idea what that was during this event. You had no idea. This whole thing, if people are getting trampled and you're not gonna know, and then why would you say try to find protection after that? It's a stupid statement. Tell your kids to listen to you. Why would you say that? Stay off your phone. There, I think you just say situational awareness, like situational awareness. Like, yeah, you don't answer your phone. You don't, and until that event has concluded, okay? And again, they're going to wrap up typically in 8 minutes. And you definitely know you're in a safe area or it's concluded, the police have brought an end to it. Then yeah, access the phone. And then I'm not going to give you any more time on this article. I'm probably going to link it out because I did tweet it. So I'm going to have the hashtag to it, but it's bad journalism, buddy. Corin, it's not good. It's not good. And it's 9 quick decisions made by those who lived. And you're implying this is from Vegas. But how the hell did, tell your kids they need to listen to you and carry them if you guys can. Look to barricade yourself in. I mean, some people did that with a cooler. Defend yourself. No, but no one defended themselves. No one there defended themselves against him. Nobody had to try to tackle him and take him down who was involved with this. I mean, you had the security guard at Mandalay Bay, who had 200 rounds come through and was hit. But I mean, if you're out on 22,000 people for the concert, I mean, you're not having to rush this guy and take him down or something because you have no other choice. It's just stupid. Yeah, Corn. I mean, if you ever want to come on and talk, I mean, I'd love to talk to you about the article and just why you wrote the article. One, why you wrote this article, okay? And your reaction to what I think about it, because I think it's junk journalism. This is a horrible article. You're not doing anybody any good with this, Corin. All right. Let's take a pause for the cause.
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
And welcome back to the Safety Doc Podcast. We are again in extended version mode. You know what, though? A couple of weeks when Larry and I do our show, that will be 60 minutes. We'll be back to that span. But you know what, though? I'm getting more people than not who are saying they'd like the longer shows because of they go out and they do something, whether it's hiking or they just keep a show on in the background while they're working on a project or in the garage or on a commute. And with a commute, it's pretty easy to, listen to it over a couple days and things like that, just as if you're listening to a book on tape. But anyway, a book on CD, a book on thumb drive, whatever it is. So anyway, how do you train for such events? So here's the deal. And I got this pretty damn concise here. So even in Vegas, this wasn't something anyone would have regularly trained for, that the Vegas police would have regularly trained for someone, bringing in 15 guns and 1,000 rounds of ammunition or whatever and breaking out a window 32 stories up and shooting down at people. Not that the Vegas police aren't trained, but I'm saying whether it be Vegas, whether it's going to be, New York, Baltimore, Milwaukee, whatever. I mean, you train in general, and you know that if someone is from an elevated position, it's much harder in daylight versus nighttime and things like that. So again, you just train in general of if you try to identify where the shooter is. And again, if there are shooters, and you have to be very aware of the environment that you come into, that in police, know this, and law enforcement know. I mean, that they'll have a large perimeter and they'll work that perimeter smaller and smaller. But if, they will try for schools, for example, though, I mean, they're going to try to get in and neutralize the shooter that they're aware of, but they're also being very cognizant that there could be other shooters at the same time. So it's like, even though this Stephen Paddock is neutralized, I mean, takes his own life, they're doing a complete sweep, and they're continuing to sweep because what if he has accomplices that he is working with and they've gone silent, and all of a sudden they spring out and they start acting. Or what if he had explosives, but nothing was set up? What if he would have had something wired up, or a vehicle that he would have had parked proximal to the, arena to where this performance was, and that would have been set to detonate at a certain time. So anyway, it's their police and fire and EMS are always training for nonlinear events. I mean, probably 50% of what they go to in again, I know this from talking to them. I know this from my own training, but you don't know what's going to be there when you arrive. You assess what's in front of you. You use your training and tacit knowledge, and you deal with it. Some of it would be linear, like, okay, had this before. Others going to be very much nonlinear, and you have to deal with it. In my community, we had about 30 miles away, small town, and of maybe 500-600 people. They had a major manufacturing explosion, killed I think 6 people, maybe more. 35 fire departments arrived. So this community, their fire departments volunteer, so they have maybe they've never responded to anything of this magnitude before, and they have 35 departments, or 37 in total, responded, plus other supportive agencies, American Red Cross and so forth. And And so this is completely nonlinear. I mean, you're showing up as a firefighter, and you've more accustomed to barn fires, vehicle accidents, things like that. And all of a sudden you're coming to a major industrial complex where there's been a massive explosion and a section of it leveled, and literally like a rail car lying on top of someone, and you have to amputate their leg with a doctor that arrives on the scene. It's just crazy stuff, nonlinear, but you assess the situation and you work with it, and it becomes it's chaos. But again, we've talked about chaos in previous shows. Watch the work of Dr. Paul Rapp, head of military medicine for the United States. Dr. Paul Rapp, you can find a lot of his stuff on YouTube. He's phenomenal. Talk to Paul, and things become evident in chaotic situations and high chaos of what your options are and what you need to do. And you have your tacit knowledge, your training, and you adjust. We talked about this, a week ago. We had Katie on talking about the Cajun Navy going out and doing rescues. And these are people who don't know these areas previously and don't know the extent, fully of what they're getting into. So as they get there, they do have the tacit knowledge of understanding their equipment. They've done some of this before. And every rescue gives them some piece of information that's new, but they're coming upon things. And, one of the things too, she said, which was very interesting. She said, we didn't send anyone out at night because at night it's completely different. You don't know what is in your environment. And you increase your risk, substantially. But the Cajun Navy responds to nonlinear nonstop. Now, and then what would be linear? Linear would be going to somebody's house and, ripping out drywall and stuff like that. I mean, pretty much know what you're going to expect on something like that. But nonlinear is you're getting the call and you're getting into a town that's flooding and they have no boat, and you have 3 hours and you have 350 boats. You're trying to get people out the best way that you can, and making all of these phone or these Zello contacts and two-way radio contacts, and working between FEMA and National Guard and everything in the moment to put together some type of system. And these systems automatically do scale in crises, and you don't have to practice. It's better if you don't practice, because you're not trying to conform it to some practice. You're taking it to a you're then analyzing context and situation and using non-linear to your benefit. So that's how you train. Okay. That people are always, if you're fire EMS, you're always training. You're training to evaluate the situation before you. And again, I think there's assumptions. I mean, now on the Vegas shooting, like, it was one guy, but what if it wasn't just Stephen Paddock? What if it was really like 4 people that comes out and they just didn't carry out the rest of it? So, I mean, this narrative, Corin, and you're getting singled out on this, is very narrow. It's easy to write after an event and go in and give specific, to whatever that event folds out, I try to be much more broad than that. And like, I think what Katie shared, I'll tell you, Corin, what Katie did in her interview last week is 100 times, more helpful to people than what you put together in this article. So my advice, when you are, whatever's recited by the news, the talking heads on your local TV stations, I mean, once you get into, your mainstream media, they usually have the resource to have somebody on the ground, and what they're doing is they're trying to connect up. They're smart enough to know to connect up with the police and to give you some data, but they're also trying to find people who are there to give you the firsthand account of what happened. And that's where you start pulling the stuff of like 2,200 people, and you don't know who the hell is there and who's not, who's coming to you. I mean, they might not have been there and they're just trying to get media coverage, but someone who says, I just froze. And then you take that and then you bridge that quickly into an expert, and expert's like, oh, freezing, like, that's the absolute worst thing you could do. Well, there's one person tell you the froze, 9 other people might say everybody was running around. So It's contextual, and people also, their own skill levels of the skill set that they bring and their own, mobility and other things into situations like this. So yeah, I mean, it's making these statements without any context. So, but yeah, just expect your local media to just push this stuff out, that they're going to run to school administrators because, we have 55 million kids who attend school. School shootings are popular. This wasn't a school shooting, but it makes popular news to imagine, well, what if this did happen and a school was targeted? What if this happened in an elevated position and it was a football stadium and, you have 3,000 people on Friday night? And of course, talking with police, and this is where I really wish police would say, as far as how would you handle that here? Of just saying we'd have to evaluate the situation and the context, and we train for active shooter events and look at what would be around us and make sure that we took that into consideration and the resources we had and try to neutralize the threat or threats as soon as possible. And kind of leave it at that, like be more generic, or just, that we do train. We have training. Actually, Dane County has a tremendous training facility for something like this and I've been there, I participated in it. You go through and it has like rooms set up. So like even to how to go room to room, something like that would have been very interesting to share, but just to have somebody come out and give this like blatant advice without, really understanding what truly happened. That happened after Sandy Hook too. Reality is that people need to figure out what is going on. So this is the reality. I'm saying this is the reality. The reality is, if you're one of the 22,000 people in that right there, attending that concert or in proximity to that, you've got to take time to figure out what's going on. And when I say take time, I'm not saying take 10 minutes, but you have to first figure out what's going on, because if you're running, you might run directly into the line of fire. People didn't know necessarily that this was just coming from above. And you could have been running toward where the second shooter was or the third shooter. You don't know that. So you have to take time to look what is around you. And those people who found the cooler and stuff, that's smart, okay? That's intelligent, in that it's intelligent for the reason of, one, you're providing yourself a barrier of concealment, and the fact that most of these situations end in about 8 minutes and that police are going to be on scene. This other thing too of being trampled too. Yeah, you want to make sure you don't get yourself into a crowd where suddenly you lose control over yourself. Like you're just starting to be pushed along. You do not have an exit route. So that's another thing of knowing that. And that was very interesting at the 9/11 boat harbor, because there were several blocks deep of people waiting to be rescued. And thankfully there wasn't trampling. And there was a reason for that I referenced as transference dynamic, a little bit different than this situation. People weren't actively being, shot at, although they were not at all convinced that the event was done after the second tower had been hit. And it was actually, when the third tower collapsed, I think it was at 5 p.m. So people were still perceiving that it could have been an active event. But anyway, the reality is, you need to take time to figure out what's going on. Think, make sure that you're not running into the path of danger. And again, these articles assume this is always like one person. Well, maybe it's not one person. Maybe all of a sudden then there's a detonation of something. He could have put a vehicle that could have detonated 10 seconds later. It's, you could be trampled. Yeah. You want to be in control of your movements, meaning you suddenly get into a crowd, that decreases your options, substantially. And finally, you're best always to lower your profile and conceal. I mean, right away, like to lower your profile, like get down, right? We hear that. We just know that. And the fact that that wasn't immediately, like just as the first thing here, core in your thing, get down, lower your profile. So you're a smaller target, and then try to get behind something. And then take your heuristics, your option, trying to keep your options open for as long as possible. Military studied this. Hey, I can email you some studies. Talk to David Klein, who did extensive research in the 80s on high stakes decision making in the military. Keep your options open. Communicate. So telling people to just run, especially at night in a large crowd with constricted exits and no known location of the shooter or shooters, is bad advice. Incomplete. I guess Corin and others, I'd say irresponsible. The local news covering this the day after on the 2nd, that's a ratings grab. Okay, that's a ratings grab. And trying to pretend you know more about what you don't know. You're not doing your own journalism on that. No one's, spending the time pulling up some of their own information on that. No. Corin, your article came out on the 5th in Writer. So congratulations again for putting this together for Yahoo News. You're different than the talking heads who come on the media and put a mic in front of someone and they're, someone tries to tell them what they want to hear. And also, they just don't know any better, and they should. But you had time to process this. You had time to think through this. And to assemble the article you did it's bad, buddy. This is bad work. This isn't a headlines grab article. You could have taken this and you could have had accounts from people. Maybe that would have been just interesting to ask the same 3 questions. When did you realize you were being attacked? And then, what do you remember as the first thing you did to protect yourself? And, maybe when it was all done, what did you think about of something you would have done differently? I think that would have made an interesting story. And if you're going to go to experts, see if law enforcement on the scene, somebody you could have talked to, put some photos in here. I don't know what you've got you've got a photo here of the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, a photo of, it's a piss poor photo, by the way, but, the Pulse nightclub was a confined space. It was dark, so at least that's consistent. It was a confined space. 50 people killed, but substantially different. You can't benchmark these two together, which you did. So at least, and then you have Manchester, England shooting. I mean, what the hell are you? I mean, this takes your article and makes it suck even more than it does. So, no, I think you need schematics of, you had time easily at this point. There were schematics out of saying here's where the shooter was, here's where the event was, here's where the exits were. And then have some accounts, from some people. And then if it's an outdoor event, and the reality is, I know this, I know this stuff, which you don't. I know this stuff because of the people I work with. There are going to be ways in the future to address outdoor events, which might go into play, that, the bottom line, no one could have anticipated this. You can't anticipate all things on a probability level. The probability of this was minuscule of happening. He gave out some bad advice. It's a bad article. You know what, Corin? I'm going to leave you alone at this point. Contact me. My information's out there at SafetyPhD, safetyphd.com. Find me. I'd be glad to talk to you. I'd be glad to talk to any of your experts. There's a different way to do this, folks. But before we talk about that, a little more about the Safety Doc.
Thank you for tuning in to the Safety Doc Podcast with the nation's leading safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin, author, radio show host, university instructor, researcher, expert witness, and consultant. Powerful testimonials. Dr. Perrodin has a strong reputation as the go-to safety consultant, and he was still able to exceed our expectations. When we went looking for an expert in the field of crisis preparedness and prevention, David was the single person we pursued. Not easy stepping into the touchier subjects of life, but Dr. David pulls it off. Take a listen. Now, back to Dr. David Perrodin and the Safety Doc Podcast.
And we're back live in the studio. All right. We're wrapping up here. This will be the end. There's a different way. Local media should report only the facts. I mean, local media should, Madison, what they had known. Here's what's being reported by Clark County Police Department on number of deaths and that's the time you say we are affiliate on the scene and work from there and work from the facts. Stop this projected benchmarking. So I'm going to be using that term. Stop this projected benchmarking as it's a rating grab to say, like, get people, well, what would you do if this happened here in your front yard? What would you do? It just scares people. That's all you're doing. You're scaring people. You're filling airtime. It's a high topic of interest to people, but you're not educating people. You're just scaring people, and you're trying to transpose events which you cannot transpose. Benchmarking's completely not possible. It's garbage. It's a horrible question. It's horrible questions to ask. You're just scaring people. You're not doing any good. Be more general in asking questions, of police. Like I'm telling the media, like such as, how do you train? Like this was a perfect opportunity for you to have them introduce you to the Dane County training facility, which is a large, converted warehouse, which does have like a house built inside of it. So police can show how they sweep into different rooms, or actually have police show you some things about large venues. Interview, people affiliated with Camp Randall in Madison, which seats 80,000 people. And I know those security folks. And maybe you tried to contact them and they said, no, we're not gonna get dragged into this, and just, some general questions. Because there's very, very sophisticated ways that go into security for that, which keep those venues very, very safe. But yeah, this is, but no, you go and you ask schools. This was, again, someone 32 stories up, shooting down at 22,000 people in a confined area. And you're going and you're asking schools? There's a song. It's called I Sure Could Use a Little Good News Today. Came out in 1983 by Anne Murray. I sure could use a little good news today. It's a cool song. You should listen to it. And news media, you should listen to this before anybody gets on the air and starts to be a talking head and inflate all of this and just try to bring fear and fear mongering into everybody. You didn't help anybody. It's like, yeah, let's get everybody together in the newsroom. Okay, we're right now, and let's just listen to this song by Anne Murray. I sure could use a little good news, because you had a chance here to counterbalance this. You had a chance, Madison Media, and I'm sure all over the country, but Madison's what I get. I don't watch a lot of TV. I listen. It happened to be on when I walked into the room. But anyway, you could counterbalance this. You could cover this, but you could counterbalance, and you could say, you could have mentioned like positives that are happening in the country right now, like the Cajun Navy relief. And this is where, they'll jump in and here's how to talk to your kids about violence and things like that. Well, how the hell do you talk to your kids about like Cajun Navy relief and the 20 to 30,000 people that they saved and nobody paid them $1 outside of, donations. But people are paying out of their wallets to put gas in their boats, and their props are just destroyed on, if they have prop boats in their own, and they're away from their families for weeks. How do you explain that to your kids? Of, hey, look at these people who are doing this really awesome stuff. Katie, if you're listening to this, and I hope you are at this point, that you share this out to some people too, so they can, you just don't share the bad things. You share the good things too. There's a lot of good things. And you could have done a nice job, some media station, of doing some balance of saying, you pretend like you're so concerned about people's mental health, and you bring in mental health professionals, and oh yeah, people, they feel stress from all of these things and whatever. Well, sure as hell you do. But then if you also, like are listening of what the Cajun Navy relief is doing and how they're rescuing people and getting goods to people, and 30 weeks after someone's house is flooded, they're still in helping them put up sheetrock and stuff. That is like, hey, this is the good of humanity. There's two sides to this coin. And the thing is, this was happening simultaneously. I don't know. To me, I would have been impressed by that. But I'm telling, my advice to you as my listeners, and Cappy, if you can help me out on this too, because I think you subscribe to the same thing, and Hector. Turn off the news. Turn off the news. The news, and Stefan Molyneux. That's where. Find Stefan Molyneux and Free Domain Radio. Stefan will cover this if he hasn't already, but turn off the news. The news is garbage. The news is garbage. The news, what is it? It's getting paid by commercials. It's an inch deep. No one gets deep into anything, especially local news. And national news just moves on to whatever the headline is. It was Harvey. Then it was Irma. Then it was North Korea. Then it was Maria. Then it was forest fires. Then, it just moves. It moves. It doesn't set down roots. It's not investigative journalism anymore. It is just in the moment. So turn it out as negative. It sucks. It's negative. This is why people I'll listen to the news, and I'm not the only one. But, if you want to stay informed, get your facts from, I'm going to give you 3 sites: Wiki News, Reuters, or True News, TRUNEWS.com, TrueNews.com. I actually like TrueNews.com. Wiki News, Reuters or Writers, or whatever the hell it's called, out of London, or True News. Those are 3 that I find valid. Now, if you get into Reuters and True News, you can start to get in, if you want to, tangential articles of like, what are motives of killers and stuff. Like, I don't care, because that stuff will all come out once the investigations are done, I don't know who I shared it with. I shared it. It's going to come out. I was interviewed, and it was about Adam Lanza, and I read some of the posts that Adam Lanza had made to a anarchist blog that he was a member of, which few people know of. And he made posts which were, very intellectual. If you read them and you didn't know who was writing them, you probably would. And if you read them and somebody said, "Do you think that could have been written by Ted Kaczynski?" The person said, "Probably yes." I mean, very, very high level intellectual writing. Very anti-government, contemporary beliefs of society type of writing. Of course, very positional and dark, but very well written stuff. But anyway, you can start to right now rabbit hole down into all of these things of what would have been, what's the motive and all of this. It'll all come out. I mean, that's why you have investigations. So get away from the speculation side of this. Get away from the speculation side of this. It's endless, and that's where they sucker people into, But anyway, and listen to podcast. And I just said one, Stefan Molyneux, Free Domain Radio. I don't agree with everything Stefan says. He's out of Canada, more of a philosopher, but Stefan brings in a number of guests. He's very popular, so he gets who he wants on his shows. But what Stefan is he doesn't have rhetoric. He's not going to give you the rhetoric. So he did a piece about the Orlando, the Pulse nightclub. I'm sure, obviously, if he hasn't done Vegas, I haven't checked, but usually 2 days he releases something. And, and Stefan gets more listens and downloads than like CNN and Fox and things like that. I mean, by far. But just as an example. So go to the Podcast Nation. That's where you're really going to find what's going on. Now, of course, there's loopy podcasters too, but, you're not, Stefan is paid by donors. He's funded by donors. He's not funded by, 100 different companies and has to conform to all of their different expectations and regulations and don't offend, this group or don't offend that group and whatever. Just like the Safety Doc, I do have supporters. I do work under, with Sprigio. But I can kind of talk my mind on this and too, I don't have anyone I need to report to on what I'm saying on this. I don't have a hidden agenda. The site isn't providing me my income, but what I want to do and continue to do is to provide you rhetoric-free information, perspectives on so many topics. And Vegas was just too big to not jump into, for the fact that so many people were jumping into it and muddying the waters and using it to push their own agendas. And I'll leave you with this. If you are ever in a Sentinel disaster situation, now let's say it's like a shooting and things like that, you will have tacit knowledge. I mean, there are things that you can do. I'm not going to give you specific advice through this podcast. I could design a podcast with some scenarios that would be post-specific events and look at how those were handled and how those might have been handled differently. And that's how you usually learn. Like Sandy Hook. What was it? I talked about this on an interview. We took 5 mass attacks and that it had happened, the most recent being Sandy Hook, and went back all the way into the 1920s, but and looked at the research, the actual findings, the analytical data that had come out. And for example, we know at Columbine, which was now almost 20 years ago, Columbine learned that you don't wait for a SWAT team to assemble. You get your first emergency team there. It might be a state patrol, city police and whatever, and you enter the building and try to neutralize the shooters or make them aware that you're there as soon as possible, because then either they'll surrender or they'll take their own lives. Typically. And also that you number your exits and in your building, overtly outside, so people know. They had a hard time understanding where people were located in the building. And something that we still haven't learned is to keep your pathways clear in and out, because people tend to rush, especially parents tend to rush to sites. They did a really nice job with 9/11 of shutting off the access and exits to the city and really monitoring those to not have those be gridlocked, but of New York. But so there are lessons we learn post study of this, and that's when you come in after this forensics have been completed, and then that's when you bring in your experts, and they've been involved in that forensic process to kind of look. It's interesting to me because I looked at a lot of the Sandy Hook stuff, for example, and you look at where the playground was at Sandy Hook too, and you realize even though the school was well fortified, generally as well fortified as any school was at that time. Again, when you're coming up against the level of firepower that Adam Lanza had, to say you're going to have bulletproof doors and things and whatever to try to keep them out, just not going to happen. But what happens then if Adam Lanza just waits until kids go out for recess and your playground is fenced in? Or what if he takes his vehicle as soon as kids are out, drives up on the playground, he goes, and now we've seen the vehicle attacks. So we have these modes of delivery, and a lot of people have been asking me too. They're like, Dave, are we going to start seeing drone attacks? Well, drones have been used in the Middle East for a while now to drop bombs, improvised explosive devices. Do I think we're going to see something like that widespread U.S.? Probably not. I just don't think so. Does it mean someone, is it a guarantee it's not going to happen? No. Someone might get creative and decide they're going to arm a drone or, put a bomb on a drone or something like that. But again, I think that's a low prevalence event. And yet, like, I read things like New York City plans for drone attacks on schools. So they get together and do drills and all of these things. It's there's this contingency priority matrix, which is very important. You have to understand you can't prepare for everything, and there are certain likelihoods, and then you also weigh what the impact of an event would be. Even though like a school shooting is very, very low of likelihood, technically in a school once every 13,280 years in a specific school, you have high consequence if you end up with mass fatality in that.